It's that magical time of year again, twinkling lights, cozy nights, and all things Christmas. Today I'm sharing beautiful high-end holiday looks without the high-end price tag. I'll be creating elegant ornaments to dress up the tree, festive dimensional art that adds that extra sparkle, and a charming holiday book that doubles as a riser for your decor. Each DIY is simple, budget-friendly, and looks like it came straight out of a designer boutique. So, grab a cup of peppermint cocoa, get comfy, and let's start crafting a Christmas that feels warm and cozy. To create this first Christmas DIY ornament, I picked up some plastic teardrop ornaments from Amazon, some remote-controlled tea lights, and I will be leaving all items I use in today's projects down below in the description box. I also picked up some glue dots, and I will be using some white acrylic paint, champagne gold acrylic paint, metallic flake mix for an embellishment, and some turbo tacky glue. I began this DIY by creating a frosted snowy effect on the lower part of the plastic ornament with some white acrylic paint. I originally thought I would mix some white with the color linen to make it less dark, but I realized I wanted to add some champagne gold, which you'll see me do here in just a bit. The idea is just to create a snowy effect. I made sure to paint the ornament in roughly the same area for each, so that when I put the two sides together, they would match up more closely. I repeated this process on each half side of the plastic ornament and set aside to dry. I then added the champagne gold very lightly over the white to give it a more muted appearance and to also add some extra glow. Once the paint had dried, I added a light coat of sealant to just the bottom painted portion of the ornaments to help protect the paint from scratching. This step also gave the ornament more of a frosted effect. I used sealant in satin to help preserve the shine of the champagne gold. I did set them aside to dry before proceeding on to this next step. Now I wanted a bit more embellishment, so I decided to use some metallic flakes for that added shine and sparkle. I used a small sponge brush to apply a thin layer of glue and then sprinkled on the metallic flakes. This is really super easy. You can add a lot or go super simple. It's really all up to preference. I repeated this step for each of the half sides of the ornaments and then set them aside to dry for at least a few hours. It was finally time to assemble the ornament with the tea lights. I first made sure to switch the tea lights to the on position so that the remote control would operate them. I next added some glue dots, building them up with more than one because they are super tiny so that the candles wouldn't flop around inside the ornament. I then snapped the two sides together to complete the project. All that is left is to add some pretty ribbon to hang from the tree. For this DIY, I purchased a canvas. I'm using one from Hobby Lobby in the size 18 inches by 24 inches, but you can use whatever size suits your home. I also purchased a frame made specifically for a canvas. I lucked out and found this one in the clearance section for $8.99. It's the reason I chose an 18 by 24 canvas. I didn't actually need to frame the canvas, but it's really up to preference. I do like art framed, and since this one fit in my budget, it worked out. I wanted to create a moody background, so I'll be using black, white, and brown acrylic paint for this project. I also had Corey gather some branches and sticks from our yard. The rest of the items I had on hand, which are battery-operated fairy lights with a remote control, miniature ball ornaments, and brown floral wire. I first began by mixing up a moody gray color. I wanted a warmer gray, so I used the brown to warm up the black and white paints. I kept my strokes going in one direction diagonally over the entire canvas to create this look. I also made sure to paint the sides of the canvas as well, since they will show in the frame. This is just a base coat, so I didn't worry too much on how this went on, but I did make sure to smooth out the paint if I applied too much. I do add some dimension here in just a bit with additional black, brown, and white paint, but I needed to wait for the base coat to dry first. A tip on how to keep your extra mixed paint wet is to place it inside a sealed Ziploc baggie for later use. So to create more depth, I mixed each of the paints, black, white, and brown, with my existing gray color and applied them one at a time. To help with blending each of the colors, I used just a bit of water on the same brush and blended until I was satisfied with the overall finish. Once the canvas was fully dry, Corey and I began the process of creating a tree out of sticks and twigs from our yard. The center trunk of the tree is the biggest stick, with the branches made from smaller twigs. We first decided on how the tree would look, making sure the branches gradually became shorter toward the top to resemble a Christmas tree. Corey did trim when necessary to create the shape and to make sure that the branches fit on the canvas. Once we had everything the way we liked, we then began attaching each twig branch together with brown floral wire and reassembling it to be sure we had the desired shape and placement before proceeding to attach them to the canvas. Once he had them all placed properly, Corey poked tiny holes in the canvas, just big enough for the floral wire to go through to attach the branches and trunk. Corey secured each branch first with floral wire, twisting the wires together at the back of the canvas where it can't be seen. He then added the main trunk and attached it to the canvas with wire at the top and bottom. Once all the branches were secured, we began working on the lights. Since these are fairy lights, the wire bends really easy and the tiny lights fit through the pinholes snugly, which is very important. We didn't want them to slip out, so we made sure the holes were just a tiny bit smaller than the size of the light. Now, I didn't want to use all the lights. I just wanted a few placed randomly so that it wouldn't overwhelm anyone looking at the art. I had the lights set to blinking as I worked, but I later set them to remain on and solid. I secured the battery pack with some self-adhering Velcro tape we had on hand. The fairy lights are operated with a remote control for easy on-off and timer options, which makes it super convenient if hanging this art on a wall. Last, I wanted to add some miniature ornaments to give it a more festive look. I wasn't sure which direction to go at first, whether I wanted to add festive Christmas color, but I ultimately decided to keep the colors muted, using only the gold and silver. The ornaments were attached the same way as everything else, with tiny pinholes and floral wire. I didn't get any footage of this, but Corey did attach the canvas to the frame with some screws, and we now have a unique and festive work of art for the holiday season. For this next DIY project, I started off by spray painting some plastic ball and disc ornaments I had on hand with the color River Rock in Matte by Krylon. I find that attaching the ornaments to wooden skewers using some painter's tape, I can easily spray the ornaments for a more even coat. And for drying purposes, I just use an old cardboard box to keep them upright as they dry. I had these pretty Christmas paper napkins on hand and thought they would work really well as they have a vintage appearance to them. I cut out the scenes I liked best, making sure that they were not too large for the size of my ornaments. I also used some Mod Podge to attach the napkin to the ornament. I began by applying the cutouts to my ornaments using the Mod Podge. I only needed to cover the paper and not the entire ball. Now, some of you may notice a problem here at the beginning, something I didn't even think about before jumping into this project with both feet. Can you guess what it is? Do you see where this is going wrong? I didn't realize this until much later, until after the application of Mod Podge had dried, but I applied the scenes upside down. I was so mad at myself. It was an easy enough fix. I just cut out new scenes from the napkins, and luckily I still had enough, and I reapplied them over the existing scene. I wish I had paid attention because I do think the colors from the application underneath bled through to the image on top and made it a bit blurry. But overall, I think they turn out well in the end. So if you want to make these, don't do as I did. Make sure you know which way is up for the ornament before applying a scene that is directional. Once the Mod Podge had dried, I went in with a paint wash, mixing a touch of water with some acrylic paint and nutmeg. I first applied the wash over the entire ornament to create age, and then went back in with a smaller sponge brush to add extra areas with a less diluted paint mixture. The idea was to make these look like they were old. And now I made sure to have a paper towel nearby to blot off any excess paint and drips. I repeated this process for each of the ornaments. After all the paint had dried, I gave each ornament a coat of poly in matte for protection. I really wanted to create a holiday book riser, so I purchased a hardback book from the thrift store for 99 cents. I would have used one I already owned, but I didn't have any that I was willing to transform. I made sure the book was a good size so that I had enough surface space to work with to add holiday decorations to the top when styling. I also bought some jewelry box feet from Amazon. I originally thought I would cover the book in fabric because I did have some Christmas fabric on hand, but I ultimately decided to use paints. I used acrylic paint in white, linen, Tuscan red, and black. I first mixed white and linen together to create a warm white color and painted the entire book. I painted one side first and allowed it to dry before painting the other side. I did give the entire book 2 coats of white paint. To create some contrast and add a bit of Christmas, I decided to use a dark red on the outer binding. I taped off a straight line and then gave each side of the book 2 coats of Tuscan red paint mixed with a touch of black to deepen the color. I made sure to allow the paint to dry fully between coats. Now, you could also add some transfers to this book or Mod Podge on a Christmas scene to really make it festive, but I like it plain and simple so that my decor is highlighted and not the book. Once the paint had dried, I determined where I wanted to attach the feet and made a pencil mark for a guide before gluing. I used the Turbo Tacky Glue, which sets up pretty fast and then allowed to dry overnight before use. For the final project today, I wanted to create some flocked ornaments, but I wanted them to look old and a bit distressed, like the flocking had worn away slightly. So I rummaged through my old ornaments to find some that I had that had a bit of a pattern to them to achieve this look. I bought some flocking powder from Hobby Lobby in green, but any color would work, and I'm using my leftover Mod Podge to help the powder adhere to the ornaments. This is very messy, so I made sure to do this in a space that allowed easy cleanup. Also, I made sure to use a large bowl to catch any fly away powder. To achieve this distressed look, I made sure to only hit the high points of the pattern so that the underneath color showed through in the indentions. Now, honestly, after creating these, I think the better way would have been to do the opposite by adding flocking to the indentions and leaving the high points bare. But that's why I love to craft. I always learn a better way to do something for future projects. I made sure not to overload my brush with Mod Podge. A light coat is all that's necessary. I think using a metallic ornament is best because it allows for the color to show through and give dimension. If mine hadn't already had the right finish, I would have just painted them before applying the flocking. Once I had the desired amount of Mod Podge on each ornament, I began sifting the flocking powder over the surface. I knocked off any excess and set aside to dry. I repeated this process for each ornament. I did give the onion-shaped ornaments a full coat of flocking just to make them look a little bit different. These projects are just a few creative ways to bring high-end holiday style into your home without spending a fortune. I hope these ideas inspire you to add your own special touch to the season. If you enjoyed these DIYs, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves a good Christmas project. We truly appreciate that you stopped by for a visit. Your support means so very much to us here on our channel. If you haven't subscribed already, we would love to have you as a part of our community. And don't forget to click that little bell notification so that you won't miss out on all the fun Christmas content we have planned. I don't know about you, but I'm very much looking forward to all the magic the holiday brings. Be sure to say hello in the comments and let us know if you plan to do any crafting this season, whether it be for decorating or gift giving. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us today. Wishing you a creative, warm, and joyful holiday season. Until next time.